Welcome to the Bestiary, your one-stop shop for monster lore, info, and shenanigans. Join us as we take you through today's special feature.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Bestiary. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with John.
Hello.
Tyler.
Hello.
And Stalker. I can point at them right now.
Hello.
And today we're here to discuss water weirds. Tyler, I think we have you to blame for this one.
We have randomness to blame for this one. I rolled at random, and randomness gave us water weirds.
Well, Tyler, because it was
Awesome.
random, what are you excited to talk about with water weirds today?
I'm actually pretty excited for the whole thing. I don't think I've fought a water weird.
Not so. I can tell you that a bent
Did
thief.
we
Wait, in
fight-
our campaign?
Yes, you guys nearly died to ones. To many of the.
Wait, were they in the dungeon? When we're hopping over in the water, the
Wait.
whole room was water?
Were those water weirds? I thought
Was
those
it that
were.
one? Was it? That's the only thing I remember that like lived in the water that tried to kill us. That was water.
I will describe the scenario, and this is actually a good way maybe to introduce the water weirds to listeners anyway. So I will say, okay, so the setting was this. You guys were going into this old ruined tower, and you went down, and you came to this room, and there were these guys, these pirates with these tanks on their back. And I think it was Karina.
That's right.
I think it was Morgan.
That was a long time ago.
Morgan sniped one of them, and like as he died, like he crushed the tank underneath him, and bursting out of this was this like water thing, and the other pirate like got terrified and tried to run, but you guys like ran first. You were more terrified and like closed the door on him. And you just heard him screaming behind them. And then when you guys tried to go through the next time, there were all these pools of water all over the room. And as you were making your way through, they kind of came to life and started grabbing at you, trying to drag you into the pools. And that is a water weird.
God, I barely remember that. Okay.
I remember that tower well. It was the tower where Abenthy opened the treasure chest full of bees.
Oh, I remember that. It wasn't bees.
And it was the second time that Deimos died.
It was just bugs. It was a lot of bugs.
The second
It was
time.
a very memorable time for Abenthy.
Yes, since Abenthy killed him. So
And damned him to hell. That's the
and that
specific-
too. But that's the bestiary monster, the player character, which we haven't gotten to yet. That'll be somewhere down the road. Tonight we're talking about water weirds. Does anybody actually want to give a more official description of the water weird?
Who has the Monsters Manual?
I have the Monsters Manual. Water weirds are an elemental guardian bound to a specific water-filled location, such as a pool or fountain.
Okay, that's it. That's it. No,
That's
keep
it.
going.
That's all there is.
Yes.
Okay.
There's literally they that's all they ever say, and they don't even give stats. They just kind of say, "Close your eyes and imagine."
Invisible while immersed in water, its serpentine shape becomes clear only when it emerges to attack, using its coils to crush any creature other than its summoner, and those its summoner declares as off-limits. When slain, a water weird becomes an inanimate pool of water.
Well, just from that description, so they don't exist naturally in the world. They're summoned creatures from like an elemental plane. Am I correct in that?
You are correct in that, and that
Okay.
could be a nice segue to, I think, the first thing I wanted to bring up about them, which is how much they changed over their publication history, which, John, do you want to go into?
Yeah, for sure. It's a very these have changed. They went through one major drastic change, more so than anything we've ever seen in our show before. The water weird starts in basic edition, basically as was just described in 5th. A serpentine creature that comes out. There's actually a picture of one. Morgan, look for the chintzy black and white drawing.
Ye old guy with the shield?
That's ye old guy with the shield, like saying no to what looks like either a balloon animal or maybe a very floppy dildo.
It's It's a talk to the hand and a little snake monster coming out of the fountain. I like
yes.
That is the move. He's either going, "What's up, bro?" or he's like, "Talk to the hand."
it. He's asking for a high five or talk to the hand. One of the two.
Just stop. I'm thirsty. I don't want to deal with this. Let me have a drink of water, and then we'll get back to whatever we're going to do.
So anyways, we going into the old edition, he is very much like, yes, the D&D 5 monster we know today. And second edition, basically the same thing. Then we hit third edition, and suddenly we get these humanoid people creatures who are like nymphs almost, and the water version is like a healer. And it's they're oracles, and they're kind of maybe friendly, and it's a very different direction than what we saw before. And fourth edition gets rid of them completely. There's no official entry for water weirds, and then we're back to fifth, which is like, yep, they never changed, back to the normal.
Well, actually, they changed quite a bit from first to fifth. Because they were initially a lot more dangerous, because once you got constricted, they had a save versus drowning, which was literally you save or you drown.
Immediately?
Yeah.
Like no extra rounds?
You are unconscious immediately. And they were chaotic evil as opposed to neutral in fifth.
And there's one other major thing they took out, which was in first and second edition, the water weirds could actually enter a water elemental and take it over.
Yes.
And that is pretty much just not mentioned in fifth. I guess that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's...
What would be the benefit of doing that?
Well, water elementals are bigger and tougher, and also, as we'll probably talk about later, water weirds can't move.
Yeah, they're tied to their pool.
Oh, so it would give them like a mobile suit.
Mobile Gundam suit.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went to. No joke. I was trying so hard not to reference the anime. It's okay. I'm glad we're all on the same wavelength here. It's fine. It's good.
So one of our creatures that has changed a lot over the years. And I couldn't suss out a great reason for that. The only thing I could think was that maybe because there wasn't an equivalent in the fire, earth, and wind domains, which, of course, those are the four primal elements that we deal with in Dungeons and Dragons: earth, wind, water, and fire. Also a good band, but they didn't have like an equivalent for the weirds. Like there was just water weirds. There's no earth weird. There's no fire weird.
There is in third edition. Third edition changes it to just elemental weirds.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like that's the only thing I can think of, is that in third edition, they decided they wanted a weird for everything. And then they went with this new direction with them. I also know that third edition, it doesn't show up right away. It's the second Monster Manual they appear in.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened. I don't know where these things went for a good 2 editions.
Yeah. It's interesting. And it's one of those things that I feel like I find myself saying a lot, that like third edition, second edition did really well, that fifth edition kind of loses. Like third edition, they kind of leaned into the weirdness. Yeah, I see you shaking your head, Morgan, but it's...
He's too. It's not just me. Blame Stalker.
in the classical sense of the word weird, where it meant, like a soothsayer, a fortune teller. So like all of the different elements have kind of specific areas that they are in some way oracular.
I mean, it should be noted they do also keep the weird as we know it in third edition. If you read the ecology article, it kind of, I think is it just in the ecology article, or is it in the Monster Manual too?
I didn't find the 3rd edition Monster Manual, so I couldn't look at the.
Okay. They bring the weird back. It's in either the Dragon 347 Ecology of the Water Weird, or it's in the manual itself, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But it calls them a lesser elemental weird, and so they create this kind of hierarchy where it, like the little water weirds grows up to be or is kind of a lesser formed version of these adult weirds, I guess is what you'd call them. And are they always women? Is that the thing? They always appear as women?
Seem to have genders, are they?
The Dragon article describes them as appearing all as striking females.
I saw that they added a female / serpent-esque element for a little brief period, and then they went back to kind of like a
well, that could just be artistic interpretation, because like again early on it was like just a snake-like form, and I don't know that like.
Well, no, the book actually does say this. The Monster Manual says here, I've got it up right here. It goes, this is 3rd edition, keep in mind, just 3rd edition. But it says the upper body of a weird always resembles that of a beautiful female humanoid. The lower half may either be humanoid or a serpentine column. And then they keep this pool thing. A weird rises from a pool of the appropriate element, which it can never leave. So, I will say the earth weird kind of gets screwed here. I mean, water rises from water, fire rises from water.
Fire rises from water?
Or fire rises from lava, a pool of lava. And then you've got, like, what does air rise? What is a pool of air? And then, what's
a cloud? That's not even...
It's also
that's
water.
Still water, right? Yeah.
And then earth just rises from mud, which is still kind of water, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I imagine it could emerge from like molten metal,
Okay, that's kind of cool.
That's a lot of how I interpreted like the earth or metal kind of element. A lot of the times was strictly from
just a T1000 appears.
So let me run a quick rundown of the group. So Stalker, what do you think of this new version of the weird that pops up briefly in 3rd edition?
The hot chick version?
Hot snake chick rising from a cloud.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is clearly an attempt to kind of draw in more players. That they're like, hey, we don't have a lot of interesting, appealing effects of monsters, so maybe we can draw like a kind of an interesting monster or modify a monster to make it look more appealing to a certain group. I don't think there's really much like reason to put much form behind it.
So you're not. So you kind of think this is a weird move, is what you're saying. I
think it's a very weird move. I think it was also just an attempt to like draw in more players, and I don't think there was a lot of thought behind it. More of like, I like girls, and let's add a girl form to a water.
Okay.
Although I guess they could throw back. I'm sure there's historical context for like water creatures where there's like a
so you're basically saying let's make Faerun hot again. Like let's make Faerun sexy.
That's
again.
That's my guess. That's my guess. I don't think they use the historical context. They could have. There's definitely reason like elements for them to tap into, but I don't think they did. I think this was just a base instinct. Like players are like, let's add a little something sexy. Let's spice up D&D a little bit.
Morgan, what do you think? What do you think of this version?
It's too close to like naiads and nereids and like half a dozen other like siren, like water-based kind of sing you to me so I can devour you kind of type characters. And it's just like that doesn't make it that makes it more boring, I think, because it loses any sense of originality. The weird snake creature that pops out of the water and strangles you is a lot cooler, I think, than like sexy lady. Like, cool, another one, yay.
Another one. Just kill it. Another sexy lady. Cut that bitch down.
Pretty much.
All right. Tyler, what do you think?
I think again, it's trying to tie into like it being a weird, like it's like a weird sister, like, so I get it. Like they're trying to create a monster with a different role-playing purpose than something you fight. The weirds are described in the ecology article. Like you have to go find some object that ties into the like prophesying nature of the weird you're looking for, and then you have to go give it to them.
This is not the weird you're looking
and
for.
either they're going to be like, cool, I'll tell you this, or yeah, I don't like your face, I'm gonna drown you. That said, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a sexy lady. I think it would be better as a snake.
You bring up a good point. I mean, about the nature of creatures in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, the weirds, the water weird started as this whole group of trap creatures, right? And this goes back to Dungeons and Dragons history. We talked a very briefly last time with Robert Kenzie about chainmail, which was the origins of Dungeons and Dragons. Chainmail was the first set of rules, which was just built so people could take their action figures and play with them more, is the very, very, very short version of that story. But essentially, they were tabletop battle games like Warhammer. And then these dungeon rules came along, and they were not thought to be originally like a big draw. And then, of course, it took off. But I think as the game transitioned from, okay, we're all on a battlefield into the dungeon, the verb that Dungeons and Dragons works with is still the same, right? I mean, this is actually one of the complaints some people have against Dungeons and Dragons, is that the verb you use to do most things in Dungeons and Dragons is fight it, kill it, attack it.
Yeah.
Right.
All of our characters are built, classes are built for that. You know, you might have sure we have skills, and you might have a couple things like, especially rangers who get these like, you know, you don't get lost in the wilderness kind of things. But the vast majority of our abilities as characters are combat abilities. That's the verb you use.
True. And again, that's going to tie back to like how you play the game, and if your DM is going to throw you puzzles to solve to shake it up. But yeah, you're right. D&D at its basis is a power fantasy where it's like, here's this little runt character who goes on to be a level 20 god who can decimate anything that walks in front of them. And that's fun, but like, yeah, it's nice to have some.
Well, that's the game. I mean, this is why people eventually created games like Mouse Guard or Burning Wheel, where it's a very different way to resolve situations. But in Dungeons and Dragons, the fact that is your verb, like attack, I think there was this move, I don't know if it was Gygax or Arneson or the collective group, to kind of say, okay, so you're in a dungeon, which is not a giant battlefield. How are we going to apply this attack verb to a dungeon situation? And I think trap monsters were the answer, because they're traps, but they're traps you fight. You use the same verb to get out of them. They're, you know, this is where Gelatinous Cube, we see the Mimic, we've, you know, and these water weirds, these all kind of come about, I think, as that trap monster. So I think that explains some of the things about it, like why it can't move.
Right.
You know?
Well, and what did you find as the first appearance?
Does anybody else want to jump in on this?
I did not look up the first. I always forget to do that.
It's not always easy to find.
Yeah, I didn't see anything, but it's hard to find stuff, especially online, and how long the history has been. So I get lost like pretty quickly.
Well, unlike Stalker, I just called Gary Gygax and I just asked him.
There you go.
Which I recommend you do that next time.
I have questions. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, my necromancy's a little weak on that one.
Well, what Mr. Gygax said is that he actually wrote the first adventure with them, and it was written for a tournament in 1976, and that was the Lost Caverns of Saj. We've done this before. We've done this.
Yes.
This was back in
it's
the
also the first
episode.
appearance of the Bahir.
And we couldn't say it back then, and we can't say it now.
I think it's
Sajkanth?
Sajkanth, yeah.
Did we? Okay, Sajkanth.
And that definitely fits, because Gygax in reading the modules that he makes, the dungeons he tries to make, it sort of feels like at a certain point, he was very much like, oh, you don't really know how to play D&D. Let me show you how I'm going to kill you. He was the DM that gets glee from a total party kill. And water weirds are one of those like, oh, you wanted a drink? Yeah, no, you're dead. You're dead now. Wait, how did I die? The water was actually an evil monster.
It was a trap. You know, why not? I do kind of like that it's not just like a creature that occurs naturally in the universe, that it's something that has to be summoned, that there's an intent to put it there. So there's a lot of use you could, because it's like, hey, we're traipsing around in the wilderness. Why in the heck is this random puddle like possessed by a water weird? Like somebody had to put it there. That means there's something important nearby. And so like that could be a whole way to start a quest, maybe, to get characters looking for something else. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. That's actually a really fun idea, is that, you could, what I like about that is it gets behind how characters in this world would really react to this thing, right? Like, okay, this is here. That's not normal. Thus, let's hire some adventurers to get them to go check that thing out. But I also like what you're saying, Tyler, and it does raise a question for me. I'm sort of I'm surprised that players used to put up with that, because I don't feel like I could get away with that now. Like, I know there's lots of deaths and stuff, but I feel like if I was just like without explanation, oh, you took a drink and it killed you. I don't know. I feel like there'd be a revolt.
I remember playing games on the computer way back in the day, Sierra Games, King's Quest, where you had to go out and try things and it killed you all the time. Games have evolved from that, so it's a little bit more forgiving, or a lot more forgiving. And I have to feel like D&D also evolved in that same sense, where it's like you can't trust anything in this world. Everything can potentially kill you. So think outside the box. Think big picture. Solve a puzzle, or in this case, a challenge of survival by, all right, that's water, but I'm going to poke it with a stick to see if it attacks me.
Okay, guys,
just to make sure that it doesn't kill me.
Well, the funny thing about that is literally quoted in the Monster Manual for 5th edition. I love that you said that.
Poke it with a stick?
Pretty much. It says, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm pulling it up. It says, on the Water Weird page, there is an in-character quote up top and it says, this is page 299 in the Monster Manual. Before you drink from a fountain or pool, toss a copper coin into it. It's a small price to pay for your life. And that is supposedly from X the Mystic, his second rule of dungeon survival.
I read that and I thought, like, how great would it be if that's like the origin of like tossing pennies into pools, is like, oh, maybe there's actually, like, because there's plenty of mythological evil creatures that live in the water, and if you get too close, they will drown you. So what if
now that is the origin? I mean, that's the origin in our game now. That's genius.
This is canon. That. Like,
that's very Tolkien. That's like in The Hobbit when he says, and this is how the game of golf was invented, and
right,
things like that. Yeah, I love that. That is definitely where the saying comes from.
But why a copper coin in particular? Is it just throw something in it and see if it moves, or is it specifically something about the copper?
I think it's cheap.
Yeah, I think
it's.
I was just asking.
It's
okay, fine. Ruin my idea.
You're paying for the right to drink.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's a water weird going to do with a coin? Precious.
Give you his 2 cents.
Well, there's 2 things Morgan has said, actually, though, that do lead on to another good topic. The first one, you just mentioned, like, hey, does copper have any kind of effect over these things? And I actually can't remember what the other one was, but
okay. We'll get back to it, someday. Don't worry about it.
It goes to the same subject, so we're on the right direction. All right. I'll have to listen to the podcast later, and I'll add it in.
Oh yeah, that one.
So
here's just a little injection of what I was trying to remember, but I couldn't.
What it does bring me to is, I remember what it was. There we go. I remember after all that.
It only took 5 minutes. All right.
You were talking.
just driving in circles. Eventually, we'll figure out where we're going.
We'll come back. It's brains.
That's what roundabouts are for, right? Like, I just need some time to think about where I want to go. I'm just gonna. Stick in the center lane.
This is why I always get stuck on roundabouts. It usually takes me an hour to get someplace that's 5 minutes away because I get stuck on a roundabout and I'm just like, where am I going?
Well, after the third revolution, you just don't even know which direction's north anymore.
And the best part is if you go fast enough, nobody else can get in.
They're all just honking their horn. You're just like, wee.
Ow!
Okay.
Oh god. Okay, so what was the second thing?
Okay. So the second thing you said was that they are summoned by people, and that's an interesting point about them is that they have to be summoned. And this kind of brings me to one really cool thing I think they did with them in 5th edition. And it starts with the Princes of the Apocalypse storyline, and that is they create the Water Weird tank. And I'm actually gonna read this description. I think this was a way to get around, a very cool way to get around the stuck in place trap monster. What it was is it's this tank that these cultists will carry on their back, and they're loaded with a water weird, and they can release it and telepathically command it to attack creatures for them, and it basically comes out of the tank and stays like on their back, like they have a backpack
Because they're carrying the tank that it's okay.
right.
What's to stop it from attacking the person carrying the tank?
So this is part of what you were saying, right? People summon these things and it won't attack the summoner. When they have the tank, it won't attack the person wearing the tank.
So that would be like the what is it, Gias? Is that the phrase?
Like is it Gaius? Gias?
Is it Gaius or Gias?
Is it just Gis?
I think it's Gias. The Geas, right?
Yeah, but it could be Gaius. Who knows?
But the other interesting thing about this tank, and I'm going to read the description here, is what it's made of. A weird tank is a 10-gallon tank of blown glass and sculpted bronze. So bronze comes in here in an interesting way. With a backpack-like carrying harness fashioned from tough leather. And a water weird is contained within the tank, and it goes on with a bunch of rules of it. Another interesting thing about this tank is that if the water weird is killed, the tank loses its magical containment property until it spends at least 24 hours inside an elemental water node. When the tank is recharged, a new water weird emerges from within it.
What's a water node?
It is from the Temples of Elemental Evil.
Oh, well, not entirely. They are in the Temples of Elemental Evil, but other writings expand on what a node is. And it also gives us some hint as to the actual origins of the water weirds and a little bit of a clue into the nature of how they survive and what they survive on. And this goes a little bit into the elemental planes, but before I jump into that, because that's kind of a whole big topic.
Before you get into this deep topic, right quick, I looked it up. According to the Oxford Dictionary, it's gesh.
Well, we were all wrong.
Gesh?
It's Irish.
Oh.
Okay.
God, I've never said that.
Yep. No.
No, I feel really dumb.
It's one of those words that you see like in literature, but you don't ever hear anyone use out loud. So
right, like sog can't.
Yeah.
Sure. We'll go with
That's
that.
a very common phrase I come across in reading, but not at all in common.
Yeah.
Robert Frost used it a lot.
Conversation. It's weird.
There's a whole poem about it. As I walk across these sog cans.
Yeah, it's one of the more obscure poems.
He was such a prolific writer. It's amazing.
In the inspiration for Gygax's dungeon.
Yeah, absolutely. In the poem, he comes across a water weird, but he defeats it by throwing a copper coin into it.
Because I was wondering if anyone had any could find any literary references. Because they do seem like a wholly created thing.
Well, if Morgan, if you want to pull up on the, there's another picture here of this sort of waterfall looking dragon thing. This picture is inspired a little bit by, of course, the classic mythical beast, the Hydra. And I believe that is where I know we have Hydras in Dungeons and Dragons, but I do believe that some of this is inspired aesthetically by the Hydra. So do we, before I jump into elementals, do we want to check the chat at all and see if there's any questions? Or
yes, chat has said a couple things. Let me see here. Amy Chibi had a comment asking, can this creature be hurt by toxic substances or chemicals? I read that it's not able to be poisoned, but how about waste or something similar?
I actually like the answer 5e gives this, because in 5e, the creatures are of neutral alignment, but they can be swayed neutral good or neutral evil based on whether the condition of the water. If the water is a sacred site, they will lean towards good. If the water is filthy and disgusting, they will lean towards evil. And the evil can be removed from them with a purify food and drink spell.
Didn't I read in one version that used to be able to kill it?
You're absolutely right.
Destroy water used to be, or purify water used to be the only way you could kill it.
Does it still work now? Or would that, I mean, not that everyone has purify water in their spell list anyway, but would it still work in fifth edition?
I don't think so, based on just the fact, I think it's a pretty low level spell. Does anybody do you know that, Tyler?
I want to say it's either a cantrip or a first level. It's pretty low.
First level.
It's a first level?
It's not a cantrip.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's a paladin cleric.
Yeah.
And druid.
It's druid,
and
yeah.
It's a first level transmutation. It can also be a ritual though. So
I could see it being I could see it being a cool story piece if you had to use Purify, that spell on like a certain part of the dungeon to like expunge it of its water weirds. That could actually be a really cool idea for a dungeon, that you have to get to the heart of the dungeon, use the spell, and while you're using the ritual, your party members have to stage like a siege, like all these creatures are coming at you.
Like a quick spell wouldn't work, but the full ritual would, kind of a thing. Okay.
And that would definitely
that would be kind of fun.
That would definitely fit with the old first edition version of Water Weirds, where it was you can't kill a water weird just by beating it up. It'll disperse, and then over the course of time it'll come back together. The only ways of stopping it are getting it far enough away from its pool or using the destroy or purify water spells.
I also have to point out, I really like this comment by Black Mamba where he brings up this adventure, and I haven't heard of this one, but there's a well where the adventurers are drinking from this well and they get temporary hit points, but then they slowly start to lose hit points as they keep going, and it turns out they're slowly getting the water sucked out of them by an algae monster. I don't know if any of you guys know which adventure that is, but that's pretty cool.
It's pretty great. I don't think I've heard of it.
It's such a great concept, though. Like, oh, this is fine. Like, look, I healed up a little bit, and then it ends up being a long-term detriment.
So I guess at this point, I will jump in to the elements, unless you guys have something else to add first.
To the elements.
To the elemental planes, which is a big part of this discussion of water weird. So I'm gonna put a little bit of a disclaimer on this. I'm gonna save the full version of this, where we'll go into the Princes of the Apocalypse and the Temple of Elemental Evil, which is honestly one of my favorite publication like histories of Dungeons and Dragons, just because it's so far spanning and it has such an effect upon the psyche of the game. It just stuck with people. But I'm going to save that part of this story for the actual elemental bestiary that we'll do at some point.
Oh, quick aside. When I was reading, I kind of dived into the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth a little bit. Apparently Gygax had a plan for a long running continual story that ran through all of the modules, and Sojkanth takes place in this secret canon right after the series that is the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Oh, interesting. So he later retcons it in.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely written before Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so let's get to the planes real quick. So in Dungeons and Dragons lore, you have a series of planes kind of stacked either next to each other or some say on top of each other. And in D&D 5 lore, you have the world is kind of in this one plane, and then surrounding it are what's called the inner planes. And the inner planes are earth, fire, air, and water.
And heart.
What about heart, John? What about heart?
And what about snakes?
Yeah, where's that plane?
Where's the plane of snakes? John?
I can't remember if I made up the elemental plane of snakes for the Tomb of Horrors, our version of it, or if that was in the original. I can't remember.
I feel like we made it up at the table because the snakes just kept coming.
So it was just a joke for us.
It was just a joke. I'm
not sure. I could totally see Gygax writing, the elemental plane of snakes where everything's terrible. But aside from Heart, which actually Heart had an attack a long time ago and it's gone now.
God.
And the elemental plane of snakes was destroyed by my players when they put up a permanent force shield around it and let it just empty itself into the force shield. So that plane is done. The 4 that are left are fire, air, water, and earth. And they actually touch at their borders. And I love like what kind of happens at the borders, like where fire meets air. I think it's all like there's like a steam world, and where water touches earth, there's like these swamps, and where water touches air, there's a frozen land. But the elemental plane of water is where the water weirds come from. And the elemental plane of water has changed a lot over the different editions. In early editions, it was when you went there, you were literally in an endless underwater environment. No matter which direction you swam in, there was no surface and there was no bottom. So it was just underwater forever. And it was generally a bad thing to end up there if you don't breathe underwater.
Yep, I could see why.
What's interesting is that by 5th edition, they've morphed this. And I think 5th edition is the first one to add in land masses in the elemental plane of water. There's actually islands, and they're almost described as paradises in some cases. Like, they're just tropical islands with like perfect skies. And
so now there's actually like an atmosphere in this plane of water, or are they like little bubble capsules of land that float around?
No, there's air. There's breathable air in the plane of water. There is also a city, and this has existed since I believe at least 3rd edition, but there is a city called the City of Glass. And the City of Glass is like a sphere of glass that sits halfway below the surface and halfway above the surface of the plane of water. That's one of these places where actually the creatures of the water and the creatures of the land like coexist. So this is kind of the plane is morphed over the years. But regardless, it's always been described as one of the planes with the most openings and the easiest openings onto the physical world. And that's because those portals that are normally hunted down and closed by wizards and sorcerers, they're so far underwater that they're very difficult to reach and actually shut down. So things are constantly traveling back and forth between the planes. We've talked about some of these things. Aboleths, for instance, do this. But also water weirds can come out of there and into our world. So they don't have to be summoned. But one of the interesting things about them is that they definitely seem to draw their power from that world. And it feeds into this theory that's gone around, which is the elemental plane of water is actually a living plane. It's a maybe not self-aware, but it's a plane that's actually got its own life force. And the water of that is like that thing's blood. And that's why you need these nodes, which are essentially all a node is a place with a connection to the elemental plane of water, some strong connection. Maybe it's fed by a spring that eventually comes however far away from a portal from that plane. or maybe it's a place where a strong water elemental creature was killed on our plane and left its mark. But it gives us the sense that these water weirds get their life force from that ultimate life force, and that's how they form.
That's a weird concept to me.
A living plane?
Yeah, just a little bit. For water.
There literally is a living plane. It's called Nerth. And it's described in the
Nerf?
Nerf. It makes a lot of really fun toys for kids.
Oh, Nerf. I thought you said Nerth, like Earth, but with an N in front of it.
It is. That is it. I was just joking. It's Nerth.
It's Nerth.
Yeah, like Negaduck from Darkwing Duck.
I feel like someone was like, I need to come up with a name.
Nerth.
Just kind of
That is like the least inventive name for a planet. I'm genuinely disappointed.
It's not the most exciting read either. It's one of those things where you read as a DM and I'm like, okay, how would I ever use this in a game? Like,
Or why? Why would I ever use this?
but it is essentially a self-aware plane of existence that doesn't know why it's self-aware and is on a journey of discovery. Hallmark Channel special waiting to happen.
God, no.
It's terrible.
Okay.
The worth of Nerth is what it's.
The worth of Nerth.
Oh, John.
Oh,
John.
So
that hurts.
anyway, that is my run through as far as where their life force comes from and what they do on the their connection to the planes. They essentially just live in the elemental plane of water, and you'll never know where they are because I think they are essentially undetectable while in a body of water.
How are they created?
Wait, as in like where did their form originate or their like species?
How do they procreate? The eternal question of the bestiary.
They're summoned. They don't actually get to have it on, like get it on. They're just magicked. Unless you're talking about in the plane of existence that they exist in.
Yeah.
Like, because that's a catch-22. Like, are they summoned into existence by like the needs and the wants of the sorcerer that's doing that? Did they exist before that or not? And if so, like, how would we know? Because all we see is just their, hey, it's a snake lady stuck in a pool over here. She ate my lunch money. Like,
it was the lonely wizard that was like, you know what? I don't want to just protect this pool. I'm also lonely.
I also wanted to be attracted to it.
I agree with Morgan. I think that I don't think that they actually procreate in any. They don't procreate like in any sense of the word that we understand. I believe that the theory of the elemental plane of water having its own life source and being its own life source makes the most sense to me as to why these things could keep coming about, because then it would essentially be like our cells in our body. Our cells are alive. They're very, as compared to the full being of who we are, they're a very, very, very base creature. But, when your being is an entire plane of existence, then humans themselves are very base creatures, and water weirds it would make sense if they were just like the cells carrying, the lifeblood around that body.
Okay. Yeah.
I should mention too, there is a hierarchy in the planes. The weirds are at the bottom of it, and moving up the ladder, you kind of go from them to elementals, and then myrmidons, probably. Mephits are somewhere down there with weirds. On the higher end of that spectrum, you've got the as far as physical beings, you have like krakens and aboleths who are always plotting to try to destroy everything. And when they're not drinking with Ellie Face in her amazing bar.
We gotta go hit that tavern up someday.
And then on the very highest level, you've got these what are called primordials. They are archomentals. That's what they are, archomentals. Essentially, these are things like the princes of evil. For the water, it is Ohydra. these are like Ohydra is literally has the strength of an ocean and takes the form of a living wave.
Yeah, so Amy Chibi has a suggestion as to reproduction or like kind of like the cell splitting idea that I think when it comes to elemental creatures, the way they reproduce is by self-replicating using the elements that they're composed of. So like a budding kind of experience. And I think that's probably a solid idea with other creatures. I don't think it fits with this one, again, specifically because they're summoned into existence and their purpose is to guard a spot and rather than.
Well, I mean, they have an existence on the elemental
they're
plane
summoned
of water.
from the elemental plane.
So you're saying like in the elemental plane of water, maybe they bud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they just elemental water, and then when elemental plane water is just so full of life that you take elemental plane water to another plane and it becomes a creature?
That's actually an interesting idea. I really like that. So you basically have something that would be a drop in the ocean, but when it's separated from the ocean, it becomes something more unique and more individual.
That's kind of cool.
I like that better than what is if we went off official material, it sort of refutes that because it does mention that there's water weirds swimming around in the plane of elemental, the plane of water.
They're just not as imaginative as we are, John.
But no, I like this. Yeah, I know. If definitely not. Why are we? Yes, let's just.
They've clearly never watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine and understood what changelings are like with a giant ocean of changelings. That's the concept that I had in my head.
What they should start watching is the Bestiary,
going a little nerd
and then
on
they
this.
could make their
No. They have to buy rights from us first. They can't have them stealing all our good ideas,
If you really
John.
like this idea,
come talk to us. We're ready.
Right.
We've got more.
We'll write you a campaign with creatures and stuff.
Oh, I thought I was just going to write them a paragraph about how the the water weirds when you take water
don't
off
have
the
fast things,
I dig
John.
the idea that
we don't have fast things.
And what I like about that is it gets back to the weirdness of these things. It's like the alien nature of water from this other plane of existence. It's so alien that as soon as you bring it into our existence, it's alive. I love that. That's super cool.
It definitely makes it more interesting.
Yeah, it's a much better concept than, oh yeah, there's these creatures and you can just pull them from the plane. Like, no, it is part of the plane, and when it's away from the plane, it's so unique that it just is itself a now living creature.
And that would also kind of explain why it's lower on the totem pole as far as like CR ratings, because it's just a piece of the plane rather than something with like agency.
That also helps to explain in 5th edition the reduced intelligence that they have compared to earlier editions where they were very intelligent. They were oracles at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're just kind of water traps, water hazards, if you will.
Water hazards.
And let's talk a little bit about the nature of their actual stats in 5th edition. So water weirds are a CR3 creature.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a lot of things going for them. They're immune to poison, as was brought up by Amy Chibi. They're also immune to a whole host of conditions, including grapple and poisoned and restrained, exhaustion. They have blind sight, so you can't really go. You can't really. Yeah, even invisibility is not necessarily going to help you there. And they're resistant to fire, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical weapons. So, they only have 58 health.
Sneak
but
up on
at a
them.
low level, before you've gotten a lot of magical damage, that's going to take a lot to kill them. I think the other thing that makes them pretty deadly is when they grab you, which they have a 10-foot reach to grab you. They grapple you. If you're medium or smaller, it's automatic, and they pull you 5 feet towards the water they're in. And so until the grapple ends, you're restrained, and they try to drown it. And it says that right here. So, the way that these things are most deadly and the way they're most likely to attack is near a body of water, obviously. And if they pull you, say, into, the ocean or a river or a lake, you can break free on an escape DC 13, which isn't the hardest to do. But
unless you're one of Morgan's characters with their constant negative strength.
Shh, it's fine. Don't look at I can't help. I play rogues and magic casters. They don't have strength. I'm sorry.
But I think there's two things that can make this more deadly. One, if you're
carry me up the mountain of Benthy.
One, if you're in a like a large body of water, they're not just going to pull you in and hold you. They're going to dive to the bottom of the lake. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to have a ton of opportunities while you're struggling to get back up to come back and grab you again and pull you back down. Well,
and how quick is drowning? It's 3 rounds or something like that?
Well, this is so the player's book. The player's handbook has some really strange rule for suffocation. I think it's based off Constitution. It takes forever. And really, because rounds are so... a general combat, guys, lasts 3 to 5 rounds? Like that it's not a boss fight? Am I wrong on that?
For most DMs, yeah. For you, no.
About 20.
Yeah.
Definitely not 20. Definitely not 20.
John, I think you have a skewed view of how long our rounds take.
Let's start counting rounds.
We lose track after about 15.
Someone start making tallies.
I do count rounds. I have a bunch of tallies because I have to keep track of abilities and stuff and things and how long things last. You guys very rarely have a combat that goes beyond 6 rounds. I will tell you that.
You're forgetting that combat is a little like dog years, where 1 round with you feels like 7 rounds for normal DMs.
Well, that's because you guys take 30 minutes to make a single decision.
Because if we don't, you'll kill us.
Yes.
It's true. It's true.
This is the part of the podcast where everybody gets to hear our all the fun you're missing at our table.
There's a lot of suffering.
But as far as the rounds go, generally, 1 round, a lot happens. So the drowning rules almost never come into play as they're written. So I wanted to throw out a new potential version of that rule for DMs that I use, which makes it a little bit more, I guess, feel like people are drowning and there's a risk and it's scary.
Oh. Well, sorry, I'm just remembering Karina almost drowned or she suffocated. She almost suffocated to death that was kind of drowning. She was essentially drowning in ceiling goo that fell on her head repeatedly. Like every time.
Oh, that was good. That was a fun combat.
Every time she got it off of her head and took a breath, another one glommed onto her face. And she was like unconscious for half of that fight because she was suffocating. So I almost did suffocate / drown, John. It is feasible.
Well, you almost drowned in the very first session we played, where we were underwater and you got grabbed by underwater seaweed.
Yep.
And
episode 1 of Alignment May Vary. Go check it out.
Yep.
I almost drowned.
So drowning in my campaigns, it is a little bit more stressful. The way I do it is DM essentially gets to decide when somebody's drowning. And there's a lot of monster entries that say, oh, they drown you or you're suffocating. So you can use that, or you can just use a situation like globs of goo falling on a character's head. Once somebody's drowning, I start having them make death saving rolls. And it's not like normal death saves where they're unconscious and they're trying to roll to see if they die. This is, they're still able to take all their actions, but as long as they're suffocating, they have to make these rolls. Successes, you don't add those up. Successes just mean, yay, you're not dead. If you get 2 successes, like a critical success, that means you get to skip rolling the next round. So that's still a good thing. But failures are bad. And if you get 3 failures and crits still count as 2, then you instantly die. You suffocated. You are dead. So it adds a lot of...
It definitely adds to a lot of tension. I feel like one of my characters tried to drown at one point.
There was a lot of water combat to the point that like one of my characters now has a boat phobia. So
I actually know the story. I know where this happened.
Okay.
Tyler was playing a paladin, a Benthi, with a very storied history. who they got onto an island, a jungle island, and while a Benthi was making camp, a giant alligator came out of the lake they were
that's
camping
right.
next to.
God,
That was so cool.
Oh, that was so
Ridiculous.
brutal.
And I want to say that, like, it didn't actually immediately drag you into water. I want to say you went after it or something like that.
Well, it got something. I had to kill
Your
it.
leg. Now, I will say some DMs, some players, Constitution has sort of become attached to drought, like to surviving suffocation, which I don't know how I personally, I don't love that. It doesn't make it like, I think a big guy drowns as easily as a little guy, or a tough guy drowns as easily as a weak guy. But
We all need air, John.
I mean, lungs get only so big. But if you want to add this in, I have 3 ways to do it. 3 suggestions for it. One is, you roll a D4 and it's plus or minus your Constitution modifier, and that's how many rounds you have before you start suffocating. Once the DM's decided you're in a suffocating situation.
Hang on, I gotta go test for Imawaza. 1 second.
Okay. The other method is that the base number. So the base to succeed at a death saving throw is you have to get a 10 or higher. If you want, you can say, hey, if your player's got a really good Constitution, you can add to this. So now they only have to roll a 9 or higher, or an 8 or higher. And if they have a really bad Constitution, they now have to roll 11 or higher, or a 12 or higher. I kind of like that because I feel like it keeps the tension there, but it makes the system a little more tied to your stats. And the third way that's kind of fun is you just let the player make a number of rerolls during the drowning equal to their Constitution modifier. And that puts it back in the hands of the players, which is always nice. Tyler, did you have thoughts on that? Looked like you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I feel like that was just trying to find ways to make Constitution more important than just a hit point modifier.
And I guess my answer to that is, like, doesn't need to be more important. Like, hit point modifiers are so good, and con saves are so useful that I never felt they needed to add more to it. But I agree. That's probably what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So your rules would have probably immediately killed Karina, because she would have had two rounds before she drowned?
Well, no. What it is that's 2 rounds before you have to start making the saves.
Oh, okay.
So it would have bought her a little bit of time before she starts drowning officially.
Which is fair, because if you are able to, like, if you can see it coming, you can take a breath. So you're like, okay, I have air in my lungs for a little bit here. And whereas if you're surprised, you're just like, oh crap, I'm drowning. So,
and that's a good point. You could, with that rule, determine as a DM, well, that glob of goo fell on her head. She wasn't expecting that. So no, we're not going to give you the con roll, because there's no, if you took a deep breath, it's just full of jello.
Don't do that. Do not recommend.
Ooh, I did have a question. Shape water. Do you think it could be applied to water weirds as a way in combat? Or do you think...
I don't know, because it could resist it, right? Because it's...
Yeah, I would assume it would be a resisted check. But then you can shape and move the water.
So would it have a function similar to hold person? But the thing is, it's a cantrip that we're talking about, right?
I think so.
Oh...
John, this is one of your favorite spells.
A little overpowered.
Is it a cantrip?
Yeah, I think we've told the shape water to kill someone with hot soup story before. If we haven't, that happened and it was me. But the I'm with I like where Tyler's going with this. I think what you're basically saying is, could you use shape water to, like, wrestle with this thing and try to force it? I mean, I love it. It would definitely be an opposed check. I also think that Stalker brings up the point of, if it's a cantrip, you always want to be careful, right? Because suddenly one very, very easy to cast spell becomes the answer to every water weird problem across Faerun, which is just
fair.
Force them into a thing. So I would say I love that. I love discussing like esoterically how do spells work on different monsters, and we come up with some really fun combinations.
Mm-hmm.
But I also caution DMs, yes, allow creativity. That's a huge part of the game, but then also be aware of what precedent you're setting. For instance, soup. Soup is very deadly.
Make it backfire. So like, oh, I heat up the water weird. Well, now it's boiling, and when it attacks you, it adds like a heat damage modifier. Or if you freeze a part of it, it's now slamming ice into you or something crazy like that.
But no, that's a great point. Maybe you try to shape water, and if you fail, you split it into 2 water weirds, and now you've got 2 there attacking you.
It gets 1 round of 2 attacks instead of just 1, and then it volts back in together and it's back to normal. That actually would be a pretty good failure.
That would be brutal.
Yeah, no, obviously, but like that's a great failure. Like you tried something very creative, but it backfires because water is very volatile in a sense.
Black Mama is saying, he's saying, what if there was like a water weird with a grapple feat? But instead of like just grappling, they absorb the people like a gelatinous cube and then strangle them and drown them at the same time. And actually, yeah, that's essentially what they do, because while you're not technically inside the weird, they drag you into a body of water and they hold you. So you are essentially, the effect is very similar. I do love the idea though of it forcing you inside of it, and then, or maybe a gelatinous cube that actually has a water weird inside of it. So it leaps out, grabs you, and pulls you into the cube. That could also be very interesting.
A symbiotic relationship with a gelatinous cube?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
All of you mad wizards out there who are building your tombs, there you go.
Everyone just calm down. Like, let's not go crazy.
So I also can answer the question of what they taste like, which is they taste like drowning.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Water plus fear, adrenaline,
and pain, and blood.
But
cool.
But I mean, again, you could weaponize this stuff. You could a cool plot could be somebody creates bottled water in Faerun, but it's all full of water elementals, and you ship it across the land.
That's a way to assassinate people. So you basically are like, hey, do you need to take someone out? Give them this bottle of water. It'll take care of them. Right.
Or we're going to ship these along with all the hidden amongst all these good water bottles, and it's just going to be random terrorist attacks against the people of Faerun. I mean, that could be a fun little campaign, having to hunt down where not only the infected, what was going on.
Where it's coming from.
Yeah, first what's going on, where it's coming from, like literally is it coming?
Who's actually responsible for it? Is the bottler responsible for it, or is it some disgruntled employee? Come on.
I love disgruntled employee as our super villain.
Yeah.
This is a chance to use that commoner stats we talked about with Keith Amon.
They denied me my birthday paid leave.
Oh.
I actually have a question. Is there a historical non-D&D like basis for the concept of a water weird, like a spirit of water?
Well, didn't we talk about the Hydra as being that?
I mean, the Hydra.
That's just a dragon with 5 heads, technically.
Yeah, I'm talking about like a elemental water that kills you if you get too close to a specific pool or river or something.
Well, I mean, there's tons of mythology that have things that live in the water or that are part of the water, and a lot of them are nature-based that, are against you for polluting their water or for being in the wrong area. It's that back to the purity thing again. But I don't know that there's one specific one that we can tie the weirds to, again, because they're summoned creatures. That makes them a little different than something that would occur naturally.
And there's a lot of creatures like the Rusalka or the Kelpie.
That's the one. Yep. I could not think of the whole time. I've been trying to remember the name of the Kelpie, and I could not remember it.
Well, maybe, Tyler, you can remember. What's the Japanese one where it has the bowl on its head?
Yeah.
And it can't spill it. Yeah, I can't remember the name.
Oh.
But, naiads. I mean, we have lots of creatures that do drag people down and drown them. You do.
It's not the Kappa, is it?
Kappa. It's the Kappa, yeah. Or the Kappa or something like that. Do snakes actually ever drown people? Is that like a method a snake uses to kill prey?
Yeah.
They will actually wrap and drown?
Pythons are known to like grab
Anacondas.
alligators and drown them.
Well,
Yeah.
how do water snakes?
Crocodiles.
How do water snakes hunt?
They
Same
tend to
thing.
have. Well, they tend to also have venom
Fish.
too.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, gotcha.
Pythons and anacondas don't have venom. They just
No.
crush them and
Constrictors.
drown them. But water snakes, some species, I think,
I'm suddenly
have venom.
very
and-
concerned about me as a small child and the handfuls of water snakes I'd pick up in the mountains. I'm still here, so I
What water snakes?
What water? You lived in Arizona.
Tyler brings
we
up
go
the
up
best
we go up
point.
every summer to the White Mountains, and there was a cabin that we were staying, and there's rivers like there, and I tromp around with a friend, and we have handfuls of these snakes and like run up to our moms and be like, look, and both of our moms would just start screaming.
I'm
Those
more
are my favorite
concerned
memories.
about you having memories of water in Arizona than I am about the snakes.
Mountains.
Yeah, mountains. Fun fact, everyone. They're called the White Mountains. There's no white there.
There's
no
no
snow.
white.
There's just nothing like that.
Yeah, there's some streams, but yeah.
So before we wrap up today, I wanted to end with a little bit of a chance for my players here to gain some inspiration in the game, and it is related to water. I know that the players have come up with, each of them has come up with 2 water facts.
2 truths and a lie.
It's a truth and lie game, and I'm gonna
Two truths and a lie.
2 truths and a lie, and I've got to identify the 2 truths out of the statements they give me, and if I fail, that player gets an inspiration point.
Okay.
All right, Tyler, I'm looking at you.
I'll go. All right. So my 3 facts. 20% of unfrozen freshwater in the world is located in Lake Baikal in Russia.
Oh,
World Water Day is March 22nd. And seawater with an average level of salt freezes at a higher temperature.
I am gonna go with 20% in Russia is in Russia, and I'm gonna go with salt water.
Wait, as the truths or the
Those
lies?
are the truths.
Incorrect. Good
Oh.
sir.
What were they?
Seawater, water with salt in it actually freezes at a lower temperature.
I knew there was something with that. Good, very clever. It's the best
Yay,
lies
inspiration!
come from truth. Inspiration for
We're gonna need it, guys.
inspiration for Milos, our
Good, because I
our-
had to burn 2 of the bonus ones I got.
to survive last time. Milos is our war-forged Mega Man character in our campaign.
Yes. He has nearly died multiple times. And he's brand new too. We feel he's like our newest character, yeah?
Well, no,
No, not
No,
anymore.
that would be Stalker, which
That would be Stalker's character.
Since I've said your name, let's go to you.
All right. So I looked up quite a few different facts because I think water's kind of interesting. So the first one is water that is warm freezes faster than water that is cool. Water can turn into ice at temperatures above freezing. And the third is there's only 2 places in the entire solar system where water in liquid form exists, and it's Earth and the moon Europa.
I can't remember if it is Europa that actually has the water. It is one of Jupiter's moons, if I recall, that has the water. I am going to go with that. I do know, and I'm going to sound really dumb if this turns out false. I believe that water does freeze when it is warmer because it has to do with how the molecules are spread apart. I'm going to say that and the Europa.
The Europa and Earth is false because there's actually multiple places in the solar system that have water.
It's not just 2.
Not just liquid. Okay. That gives an inspiration to our to your character, Ruse, our fox creature who is just joined the party.
Who's just horrified by the party that he's now a part of. He's like, what are they doing? Why do they keep doing these things?
Which is a good reaction to the party. Let's go to Morganite.
Okay. So, fact number 1. Giraffes can go longer without drinking waters than camels.
Ooh.
2, a camel's hump can store 80 pounds of water. Or 3, pure water does not actually conduct electricity.
And 2 of these are correct. I am going to say giraffes can go longer without water than camels. I'm mostly picking that based on the fact that I got to pet a giraffe recently, and they are weird creatures. They're like water weirds. They're like water weirds. They are a D&D monster. They're very strange.
They're terrifying.
Their tongues are blacker than a man who has been smoking for 80 years.
They've got purple tongues.
Well, this one needs to stop smoking because it was jet black. So, and then I'm going to go with, what was that third one?
The third one is pure water does not conduct electricity.
I'm going to go with the second one is true. If that's true, if pure water doesn't conduct electricity, that's amazing. But I'm going to go with the second one is true. Was I wrong?
You are wrong.
Oh my God. So it doesn't conduct electricity?
Correct. Pure water does not conduct electricity because there are no suspended particles of metals such as iron or copper. So if you have pure water, there's nothing for electricity to actually conduct in, which is fascinating because I didn't know that either.
I feel like I'm going to test that someday and it's going to go really wrong.
Remember, you need distilled water.
Distilled pure water. Nothing, no additives, nothing. Just
I wonder, this might get back to
H2O.
the water weird, because when you purify the water, you're removing all those elements then. So maybe whatever makes up the water weird is actually composed of many little elements floating in the water.
There you go. That's kind of why I grabbed that one. I thought it was either a sneaky way to take down a water weird or like people casting lightning on it, and why that shouldn't actually work if it was a pure water creature.
Yeah.
It sounds like something Kayvon would say if we were playing a game and he's like, well, I'm
the argument.
Yeah, I hit you with
water's actually a
electricity.
terrible conductor of electricity unless it has specific impurities, and you're like, okay, Kayvon, we know. It's fine. Calm down.
I had to bring him in here in spirit, so here we go.
Yeah, we had to mention you, Kayvon.
The 80 pounds are of the camel's hump is fat, not water.
Oh.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And that's how it stores its water.
Yep, in the fat, and but
Interesting.
so yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, inspiration
Points for everyone.
for Imawaza, our Yuan Ti that Morgan plays, who's currently wandering around. You've got a lot going on. You've got a blade that you've summoned from the netherworld that is now mixing with a rod that has been you've been told by elder gods needs to be put together to take over the world. And then you've got a daughter who believes you're the second coming. And
I thought she died.
No, she's back.
She
My
was
daughter
about
knows.
to die, and her keys saved her.
Yep,
It screwed me.
She survived. So
She's still around.
all right. Well, that was actually, we got way more out there on water weirds than I thought we would.
Awesome. Our very next episode of the Bestiary is going to feature kobolds with our friend Rashern, who's a fellow streamer of mine. Also, I've known him since college, so we go way back. So that should be entertaining and different than our orcs, because kobolds are very, very different, if also evil characters.
I love kobolds. They're so good.
And me and Tyler have and Kayvon actually have all experienced the best kobold in the world.
Many treasures.
Oh, God.
He give you raspberry twist.
Okay, I want this character in our campaign. Come on.
Join in next time to learn all about very strange kobolds.
We will tell our story. We will tell our kobold story.
Perfect. Thank you so much for watching. Check us out on alignmentmayvary.com. All of our links to all of our social media things are on the website, as well as past episodes of The Bestiary. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.